approach to create context for your student. So if you go to the next slide for me, Aaron, before we talk about our agenda and talk about our topic today, I wanted to share briefly more about who I am. Again, I work at WashU in St. Louis. I'm the Associate Director for Rural Recruitment. And I think it's first and foremost important that I share that I am from rural America. I'm from a rural community in Southwest Missouri. Sadly, I don't see any Missouri folks on the call today. If I missed you and you are, please share where you're from in the chat. But being from a rural and small town myself, I understand the amazing capital and assets and hard work and resiliency that our rural students bring. And so when WashU opened up a position to lead our rural recruitment efforts, I was happy to apply and happy to be here. And so I just want to share that, yes, St. Louis or WashU is in St. Louis. We're in a mid-sized city, but I do come from a rural community myself and understand a lot of the capital that your students bring with them. So if you want to learn more about me or my work, right there is a QR code that you can learn more about. Before I dive further into school profiles, though, my very last slide will talk about this, but WashU is a proud founding member of the STARS College Network. STARS College Network stands for Small Town and Rural Students College Network. We are 32 leading universities across the country, representing the entire country geographically. We have everyone from USC and Caltech in California, all the way up to Dartmouth and Columbia up in New England, and Amherst College as well. So we are all over the country. We are 32 schools, private and public, including Private Research One and Private Liberal Arts, whose job, our job as part of this consortium of 32 schools is to really increase college level access for rural students across the country. And so whether your students are considering a big state school like the University of Iowa or a private university like WashU, HBCU like Spelman College, or a private liberal arts like Amherst University, there's an avenue for your students through our network. We also have a lot of great fun resources for counselors. Both Aaron and Kim have done some counselor tours and workshops at both WashU and other schools as part of this network. So the very last slide has a QR code to the STARS College Network. Hopefully you've heard about us, but if not, that is a great website to visit. So first off, though, I want to go to the next slide and kind of center the scene for us. At WashU and a lot of our STARS schools, we use a process called holistic review to select our first year class. One of our deans in the STARS network has a saying that we don't actually admit students, we build classes. And so if you've sent students to maybe private liberal arts or large state schools, a lot of times what you're used to is like a GPA or a test score cutoff. So if your students are above a certain GPA, they get admitted to a university. They're below a certain GPA there, they are denied. Sometimes if they're below a certain GPA but have a certain test score, et cetera, they will be admitted. At a place like WashU and a lot of the private schools in the STARS College Network, we use holistic review, which considers every aspect of a student. So yes, we look at academic achievements like GPA and test scores if we're not test optional, and rigor, but we also look at personal background. So every school across the country has priorities that they're utilizing to build in their first year class. If you've ever done a case study, you are familiar that we use the phrase priority a lot. A lot of schools' priorities are low-income students, first-gen students, might be underrepresented students of color, might be students in certain states. Athletes can be a priority. For every school in the STARS network, one of our biggest priorities are admitting and enrolling rural students. And so we want to see more rural students as part of our first year class. So the rurality of a student, their personal background, is something that we consider when we are reading a file during selection review. But we also look at school and community involvement. So are they involved in their high school? Are they, do they play a sport? Or even deeper, are they a captain of a sports team? Have they led a sports team to state or regionals? Are they involved in clubs in their high school? So have they helped found a new club? Are they a leader in a club? Also, community involvement. We at WashU in particular want to know students by name and story, and we want to know who they are as a student, as a leader, and as a person. And so knowing how a student's gotten involved in their school and local community is super important for us. And lastly, institutional fit. I say this because if a student tells us in their essay they want to go to a small private liberal arts that has 400 students in the graduating class. Well, WashU is not the right school for them because we have about 7,500 undergrads. We're a mid-sized campus. So those things right there, personal background, academic achievements, school and community fit, institutional fit, or involvement in institutional fit all matter when a school like WashU or another highly selective utilizes holistic review to admit a student. Again, it's not just going to be the students who have a certain GPA or students who are top of their class. Sure, we do admit a lot of students who have a strong GPA and are top of their class. We also might admit students who are middle of their class or have a softer GPA who have a compelling contextual reason why they should be admitted to WashU. As I said, the bottom left here is a standard practice at most highly selective institutions like WashU. Top right, so we assess academic. If you go back a slide, there you go. No worries, Aaron. We assess academic fit through the transcript, school profile, which we'll discuss later, and letters of recommendation. So for the transcript, you want to know, has a student taken challenging courses? We recognize not every rural school has AP, honors, or even any advanced courses. That's okay. But a student taking pre-calculus, if your high school offers it, is much more rigorous than just taking college algebra 1 as a freshman, and that's it. So we want to see that a student through their transcript took challenging courses, again, in the context of their high school, right? So if 2 students are applying to WashU, one's applying from Autonomous High School and took calculus because their high school has calculus, and a student's applying from a school that doesn't have calculus, I'm not gonna hurt the student, or the fact that the student didn't take calculus at a school that doesn't have it. I'm not going to let that be a reason why that student's not admitted to WashU. But what is the most challenging course, that math course that school offers? And did the student take that challenging math course? Context is very important for the holistic review process. We want to know, what is the student doing in regards to their high school and their local community within the context of what that community and that high school offers. So again, if a school has AP and honors classes, great. We want to see students taking those. But if your school doesn't offer any AP or honors, that's okay. I'm not going to let that be a reason why I deny a student to a place like WashU. But one, I have to know that. I have to know what your school does and does not offer, and that's where the school profile comes in. And two, I need to see that the student is challenging themselves with the most rigorous classes that your school does offer. So transcript, super important. School profile, as I said, knowing what opportunities your school and community offer for part-time jobs, internships, how close you are to local other schools or colleges for students to take dual enrollment courses, knowing what classes your school does and does not offer or require to graduate, and then letters of recommendation, which hopefully most of us are familiar with. This really helps us know why a certain student in your school took certain courses. Why was a student tracked in a certain way? At WashU, we require a counselor letter of recommendation for that exact reason. If, for instance, a student did not take pre-calculus, even though it was offered because the student wanted to be involved in band all 4 years because they love music, that's okay. I want to know that, and you wouldn't necessarily put that on a school profile because it only affects one student. You would put that, for instance, in a letter of recommendation. And then we assess community fit through their activities list, their personal statement, and any required supplements. So hopefully that sets the scene for what holistic review is. Again, we aren't just looking at a GPA or a test score. We are looking at the entire picture. We truly want to know students by name and story when they are applying to a highly selective institution. And a school profile is one way we will do that. And while we're advancing to the next slide, if you have any questions or want to share examples, please use the chat. This is hopefully will be a very interactive session. Raise your hand or just post questions in the chat as we go. So how do we use school profiles? So if you aren't familiar with what a school profile is, I will show you an example in a little bit. But a school profile is a 1 to 2 sheet document or resource that you will upload into either the Common App or SCORE or into the QuestBridge portal on behalf of any student applying to, say, WashU. That kind of walks me through the different, again, resources your school has, classes your school offers, etc. The next slide will actually walk us through in a little bit what those different categories are. But when I did this presentation a few months ago, I had counselors ask me, like, what is a school profile? Is it like a online link? Is it a website? And the answer is it's actually a 1 to 2 page resource that you can create in Word or in Canva even, that you will then upload onto the Common application, the Coalition application, or into the QuestBridge application. Again, it's used by admissions officers during application reading and committee to provide context about educational experiences. Again, if we say this student wants to study pre-health at WashU and has not had a calculus, and we see here that the school doesn't offer calculus, and that the nearest two-year institution, community college, is an hour away, then we know that student did all that they could. We're not going to ask a student to drive an hour both ways, so 2 hours total round trip every week to fulfill a pre-calc or calculus requirement. So we're going to recognize that and hold that in the student's advantage when they're applying to WashU, versus a student who had access to pre-calc and calculus at their high school and lives 20 minutes away from local community college. That student had a lot of opportunities to take calculus, and maybe there's a very valid reason why they did not, that the counselor can clarify in their letter of recommendation. But for the most part, we're going to say the student that did not have access at all to calculus, we're not going to let them not taking it hurt them, versus a student that did not take it, that access to it, might be a red flag for us. We might ask more questions. So speaking of which, on the left here, these bullet points, school profiles help admissions officers create relationships with counselors. It really helps us know kind of who to contact. If we have questions about a student's schedule, or if we have questions about a student's transcript, allows us to ask questions. So I might say, in the case of student A, I might say, I see the student wants to study physics or study engineering at WashU. I see that your school offers physics. Why didn't the student take physics? Counselor might say, oh, we didn't know it was a requirement. We didn't know that it was recommended. The student didn't really decide they wanted to study engineering until later in their high school career. Oh, that makes sense. Good to know. Versus, oh, the student just refused to take it. Okay, well, that's good context for us to understand. And then lastly, understands high school context. Again, some rural schools are very small, a class size of 20 or less, and they're very isolated. And their students have less access to certain courses, certain job opportunities, etc., than maybe a student in a larger town, closer to a big city, or closer to a suburb. And so school profiles, again, really help us as admissions officers understand what your students are working with at your high school and in your local community. Now, as a reminder, in case you forget, the school profile is a 1 to 2 page document that you will create within your school community, and you will upload that into the Common Coalition and QuestBridge applications on behalf of your students. And you use the same school profile for all your students, whereas letters of recommendation are much more specific. As you all know, a school profile says, no matter who's applying to WashU from Autonomous High School, these are the same resources all these students have access to. This is the general description of our school community and of our local community. And of course, you'll clarify any individual circumstances for individual students in their individual letter recommendation. So now let's get into the granular. So what are some things that we actually recommend including on a school profile? So I'm going to walk through each of these, and then the next 2 slides actually have real life examples. For those of you that have school profiles in your high schools, great. Hopefully you'll learn something new today about things maybe you hadn't included in your original school profile. But if you do not have one or do not have any idea what I'm talking about, we will actually have a template that we will actually email all of you who are registered for this learning lab. And that template you can actually use to build out your own school profile back with your administration and your faculty at your high school. So first off is school and community information. So I want to know how big your school is. I want to know where your school is and the information about the local community. So for instance, you might have one high school in your community and that serves all students. Great. That's awesome. You might be like Autonomous, you might be a public charter school and there's a public non-charter school across town. Great. Want to know that as well. Your high school might be like Waynesville High School in Waynesville, Missouri, that serves as the high school for the entire county. So for Waynesville, Missouri, St. Robert, Missouri, and Fort Leonard Wood. So I want to know that that high school is serving students from the entire county as far as 30-minute away car ride to and from school every day. I want to know your community size. How big is your community? How big is Durango, Colorado versus Hurley, Missouri that has less than 400 people in that town? I want to know how big your town is. I also want to know what local industry is near your town. I think about this from the perspective of Lake Tahoe, California, where I'll be doing some recruitment work this weekend, or where I'm from near Branson, Missouri. Those are very tourist towns, right? And so I want to know that a lot of you that's a tourist town, and the biggest industry is tourism. And so a lot of your students are working in the summer at marinas or at amusement parks, or working at museums, or working in the service industry. Versus if your biggest industry is in maybe say rural Iowa or rural North Missouri, where you have a lot of farms, a lot of crops. And so your students are mainly farm hands working in nurseries or gardens, or working with livestock. That's helpful to know. So I want to know what your local community is, how big it is, the most common industry there, and also again, what the education scene is like. Are you one of many public schools? Are you the only school for the whole county, etc.? Going down now deeper into the actual school, student body size and demographics, I want to know how big your school is, right? Like Hurley, Missouri was a town just south of where I grew up. The graduating class was 21 every single year. That is a rural school. That is a much different rural experience than Waynesville High School that has over 400 students in the graduating class. Both are rural, both are being served by our Stars College Network, by our rural initiatives, but the experiences at a school like Hurley are vastly different than the experiences of a school like Waynesville. And so I want to know how big your student body size is, and demographics. For demographics, if you have the breakdown of racial and ethnic diversity, love seeing that as well. Amount of students who are on free or reduced lunches, we want to know that as well, because that shows us the socio-political or the socioeconomic, demographics of that local community. We want to know as well if there's been any shifts. So I saw a rural school do a really good job on a school profile recently, tell me that in the past 5 years, they've had a large number of immigrant families move into their school. And so I was going to see in the next 3 or 4 years, their class size actually double from what it was before. That's good context. So I now know in 3 years, if I'm looking at this school and saying, wow, I had a student who was 1 out of 35 2 years ago, and now we have the students 1 out of 75. I now have the context for why I'm seeing such a big increase in the graduation size of a local school. I also saw a really good school, West Liberty, Iowa. If any of you are from Iowa on this call, West Liberty, Iowa is the only Latinx majority town in the entire state of Iowa. And I want to say that again for a second. The only Latinx majority town in the entire state of Iowa is a rural town. Not Des Moines, the largest city, not Iowa City, the second largest city where University of Iowa is, not Cedar Rapids, the third largest city, but the smallest town, one of the smallest towns in the state, is the only Latinx majority community in the entire state. We understand that rural communities are not monoliths, and that if you've visited one rural town, you visited one rural town. And so demographics are super important. Knowing that West Liberty High School is a majority Latinx and immigrant community is really great context for me to know when I'm looking at a student's application or transcript, knowing what that school offers, and knowing why many of the applicants who come out of West Liberty do translation for their family. I mean, from that town, I saw multiple applications of students who said, I translate for my family, and I was like, what's going on here? Knowing that is helpful context for me to know when I'm reading applications. So third bullet point down, curriculum and course offerings. I want to know what courses your school has and what courses your schools don't have. On the next 2 slides, when we get there, you will see 2 very different examples of how schools approach this. One school, the school profile, a whole back page literally listed every single course that the high school offers. That can be very excessive. That can include a lot of information. That might be at times, and we'll discuss this as a group, that might be too much information, you could say. On the reverse, the other school listed none of the classes that they have. They just said, we have 3 APs and 2 honors. Well, what are those AP classes? What are those honors classes? And so the other school did too little. I had to actually dig for more info and call the counselor. If you think back to the last slide where I asked how we use a school profile and I said asking questions, I had to actually call the counselor and ask which of the AP classes do you have? And so you'll see here that Aaron and then all of Kim's counselors might have their own ways of doing school profiles, and no right way is the wrong way or the correct way. You need to do what's best for your school. And so for curriculum and course offerings, I usually tell counselors for a place like WashU, a highly selective, tell me the top 2 or 3 advanced classes in all core areas. So what are your top science classes, top math classes, top history, social studies classes, top English classes? And then what do you offer in, say, foreign language, right? Do you offer Spanish 1, 2, and 3? Do you offer German? Do you offer English and French? Do I need to see every course your school offers? No. But I do want to see what the most challenging courses are in the core content areas and what any foreign language you have. Some admissions reps might tell you also include some fine arts. So do you have band? Do you have chorus? Do you do choir? Do you have acting classes, journalism classes? Up to you how you approach this, but mainly I want to know what are the most challenging courses offered at your high school, AP honors or not. If you don't have AP or honors, that's okay. You still have a hierarchy of which courses are considered most challenging. And what courses do you have in foreign language? Next, last bullet point in the left, grading and ranking procedures. This is super important. Does your school rank? There's this movement right now within the field to decide, do high schools want to rank? Do they not want to rank? Some counselors have free reign on that. A lot of times the administration or the school board decides, but whatever it is, I want to know, does your school rank or not rank? At a place like WashU, we pride ourselves that 90% of our students whose schools rank come from the top 10% of their class. We're not saying that we're not going to admit students who fall below that. We do every year, but we pride ourselves on that. So if your school does rank, I want to know that. If they don't rank, that's fine. I don't need a whole paragraph explaining why you don't rank. You just need to say, at Autonomous High School, we rank our students or we don't rank our students, or had a school one time tell me that up until 2021, they did rank. And so I was able to see why applicants after 2021 no longer had a class rank and the ones before did. Grading, pretty easy. Are you on a 4.0 scale, not 4.0 scale? What does unweighted versus weighted GPA look like for your high school? So again, what are the policies and procedures for rank and grading? The top right here, standardized test information. Kind of what is your what are your percentiles for your students? What is your students' average ACT at your high school, average SAT? That's super important because you might have a student who is outperforming their peers by a lot at your high school, but still might fall below the middle 50% for a lot of highly selectives. But if they're outperforming their peers by that much, we love seeing that because that shows us that with the same resources, same faculty, same curriculum, this student is way ahead of their peers. It might be below what our average is, but this student is still outperforming those in their community. And so that helps us to know the context of that student. So knowing what your average testing scores are for your students is super helpful. College attendance history. Some reps like seeing this, some reps don't. You'll see on 2 of our examples that sharing some of the schools your students go to can be super important. Do you send students to, if you're at Honest High School, do you send students to CU Boulder every single year? Great, want to see that. But do you also send students to a local community college? Great. Also want to see that. It shows the diversity of where your students are going. But then are you also sending students across the country to NYU? That is so far from your high school that we're going to question how they got there. Yes, we want to see that. You'll notice throughout my presentation that what I tell you might be different from what a different rep tells you at a different school or even here at WashU. There's no right or wrong answer with school profiles. It is all about your school and what your community offers. And so I tell counselors, if you have room to include college attendance history, great. Do not include every single school that every graduate has gone to for the past 5 years. What are your maybe top 3 schools you send students to? And then what are maybe 2 schools that aren't in your region that you send a student to every couple of years? That's what I would share. But if anything here has to get dropped, I would drop this bullet point if you're running out of room. The last one is one you could also drop, extracurricular opportunities. I'm not a fan of this. Sometimes schools will include every sport and every club at their high school. That's taking up a lot of space, and that's a lot more words for me to read through. But if your school, for instance, recently cut their fine arts programs, that might be good to include here, saying, and unfortunately, we no longer have fine arts programs, so theater or music or band. So it's helpful for me to know that if a student wants to study music at WashU and didn't have any involvement at her high school, it might be good to know that on the school profile. And then sociocultural context. So things maybe that you didn't discuss here earlier on, things about the local community. So for here, I might include like, do you have a pipeline program where a lot of your high school students graduate or leave school early on Fridays to go work a part-time job? At a lot of rural schools, that's popular. That was very popular at my high school, where if you're a senior and you're meeting your graduation requirements, you can leave at like noon or 1 on Thursdays and Fridays throughout senior year to go work a part-time job. That is great context. If a number of your students are doing that, put that in your school profile. I want to know as much as I can about your school and community within a 1 to 2 page document. So hopefully this is helpful so far to walk you through kind of some of the things that we look for. The next slide has our first example. So this is Alvarado High School, a rural high school in Southern Illinois. Alvarado, I asked the school counselor, the former school counselor who made the school profile for this. Alvarado is a very small school. I think the graduating class in 2023 had 25 students in it. So very, very small. I know it's hard to read, but you'll see on the left here that this counselor, the very first thing it has is contact info. That sounds very simple, but you'll never believe how many school profiles have no contact info in there. So then I have to go onto Google or go onto Slate and look up the phone number for that counselor or look up that school's email address, and just adds an extra layer of steps to find information for your students. So simply including, here's our home, not the address, but like, here's our town, here's our state, here's our counselor's phone number, and our counselor's email address is a number one thing all school profiles should include. You will see here on the left curriculum, I talk about the credit hours students have per semester, 8 periods per day. They talk about that they have multiple, the very last line, it's hard to read, and under curriculum does say that multiple dual credit courses are offered through an agreement with John A. Logan College. That is great to know. I love seeing that. Instead of listing all the dual credit classes, she literally just put in there that multiple dual credit offerings or courses are offered through an agreement with John A. Logan College. So if I get a student who went to Alvarado High School applying to WashU and they took no dual credit courses, I know that that student didn't take the most rigorous courses available to them, because they do have some courses offered through John A. Logan College. So I love seeing that. On the right, next to the logo, you will see the enrollment size. Again, helpful to know this is a very small school with a very small student body. They also have their racial ethnic diversity, which is, again, really good to know, especially for our more diverse small towns and rural schools. Really great to know the breakdown of their racial ethnic diversity. The second row there, you will see grading scale. So what's an A, what's a B? You will see GPA system. You will see their honors course GPA system. So again, weighted versus unweighted GPA. For your graduation rate. Going down the left side again, you will see how they calculate their weighted GPA. You will see student awards and honors. You will see SAT scores for the class of 2023 right above the bottom right falcon. That's good to know. It shows what the mean score is for total, and then for English reading and writing, and then math. That is great. Again, I just mentioned that last slide. Great to know what the median SAT score is for their students. And then bottom left says graduation requirements. So they've listed, how many credits a student must have in American history or consumer ed or English to graduate. Okay? And then very bottom middle, college admissions. So it talks about some of the schools that their students go to. They listed, I think, 7 or 8 there that their students go to. And then the whole back page on the right is course offerings. So they listed all of the courses that their students that their students could take at El Dorado High School. Again, that's a lot, but that's what this counselor chose to do. So let's take about a minute and a half, look over this really quickly, and then, or maybe 30 seconds, and then share in the chat some of the things that stand out to you that you like or think are confusing about this school profile.
Dacoda, can I pose a question that was put in the chat? A person asked, they said you mentioned that you wouldn't expect a student to take a dual enrollment class an hour away. How would you view a student that doesn't want to take an online dual enrollment course in that scenario?
Great question, Kim. Thanks for asking that for the person who asked. So a few things I'll share there while you're reading over this school profile and then sharing in the chat some things that you like or things that are concerning for you. So I would say, Kim, one, if a student does drive an hour away, I'm not going to hold it against them. Like, oh my gosh, great. Like they are showing that gumption. They are showing that resilience. They're showing that drive. So I'm not saying a student shouldn't drive an hour away. I mean, I would love seeing that on a student's transcript that they drove an hour away to go to local community college. But students shouldn't have to, right? They shouldn't have to do that. And so for a student that doesn't want to take an online class, I think I would really encourage a counselor to talk to that student about how much are you willing to show this school that you want to go there, right? Because a place like WashU, we value rigor. And so if a student says, I'm not going to drive an hour away because I can't, I understand that. But if they have access to Wi-Fi and there is an online course and they just don't want to take it, I understand that, right? It can be hard. Online courses aren't for everyone, but I'd rather a student took the online class, even got a B in it for maybe AP Calc or Pre-Calc, than just I didn't want to take it. Now, if a student has like a learning disability or something that would prevent that, absolutely have the student self-disclose that, or the counselor can, a counselor letter. I completely understand that. I also know that a lot of rural communities don't have good access to Wi-Fi or internet access. I understand that as well. But if a student says, I don't want to drive an hour, or I can't drive an hour, take a dual enrollment course, here's an online option that I just refuse to take. That to me is different than I couldn't take the online course for a certain reason, because of a learning issue, disability, or access to Wi-Fi, or maybe the high school doesn't have an AP Calc teacher to explain the curriculum for an AP Calc course, for example. Those are valid reasons. But a student saying there's an online option, schoolhouse.world or Khan Academy, which is free, by the way, I'll discuss that in a little bit, or the local community college offers an online version, I just refuse to take it, is different than I couldn't for a certain reason. Someone in the chat said, it feels overwhelmingly busy. Are there formatting suggestions that make it easier to digest? Yes, thanks, Sherry, for sharing that. I actually have a template that we'll share in a little bit that does do that for you. I love bullet points. Bullet points are so helpful. Anytime you can show me a bullet point instead of a huge paragraph, what really helps me quickly jump to your main point. So yes, Sherry, I always recommend bullet points over paragraphs. I recognize that sometimes you might need a paragraph where top left, for instance, under curriculum, that might need to be a paragraph. I understand that. But I think also I would really encourage students, counselors to do bullet points when they can. Tara said, we're middle high school. Should we list as total school enrollment or just the enrollment for the high school? Great question. I would do two things here, Tara. I would tell us that you are a middle high school. That's great context. Know that your town is so small that or community is so small that your high school, middle school are combined into one. Great context to know, number one. Two, I would just list your high school enrollment for that. I would tell us in your school profile that you are a middle high school, but I would only list your actual high school enrollment. Okay, great comments so far. So that was El Dorado High School, a very small high school in Illinois. The next slide, is Rolla High School. Rolla is a very large public high school in Missouri. Rolla is probably going to be on the cusp of not being considered a rural or small town in a few years with the new census data. It's rural right now. Love Rolla. I'm from the Rolla area, but much different, a much larger student body. So you'll see here that they list their counseling team and the registrar. I love that. The very top, I would probably just list your counseling office's phone number. and maybe the email address for your counseling secretary or one of the counselors. That's actually more helpful than actually having to go to Rolla's website, go to the directory and find the name and then find the email address. You will see that on the left side, they have graduation requirements, very similar to El Dorado. I actually like this better though, because it's in a diagram or a box. I can more easily look through and find what I'm looking for. Bottom left, explanation of GPA value, AP course value. So they didn't tell me what AP courses they have there in the bottom left, but based upon that, I know that they have AP courses. So better than nothing, right? I'd at least like to know that they have AP classes. They also talk about pass fail. Middle right talks about community. So talk about being they talk about being in rural South Central Missouri. They also mentioned that the population of the Rolla School District is 4,200 people or students. They don't mention this, but Rolla is also home to Missouri S&T, so a big state school. And that would be great to know here as well, because students have access at S&T to labs, internships, dual enrollment classes. In the middle, they talk about Rolla High School itself. They have about 1,200 students. They're a Blue Ribbon school and a state Gold Star school. Their middle has a curriculum. So they have 7 15-minute class periods. They're 3.5 credits per semester is a maximum seated course lead. They also they talk about here that additional credits may be earned through the Learning Center located at Rolla Technical Institute. That's good to know. That's helpful. And the last paragraph below the bulldog says Rolla High School offers students a college preparatory curriculum, including AP and dual credit courses. Again, didn't share what those are, but now I know that a student who wants to go to WashU should have taken expected to take a few AP dual credit courses at this high school, which is very helpful to know. And I would love to see that on the school profile. And then lastly, bottom right there has rank and GPA calculation. So it talks about how they do weighted GPA, unweighted GPA, what their GPA scale is. And let me see here. And it does say that grades are recorded on the transcript and GPA is calculated in January and May. So read through this one for 30 seconds. Post in the chat questions you have or things that you like about it or things that maybe you're noticing that are different than the last one. And if you're wondering, there's no second page. It's just one page on this one. Andrea said that 3 columns is not working. I kind of agree. It makes it very hard to read because it's so narrow. I think that 3 columns is a lot. I think 2 columns might have been better here. One thing that I'll share while you're reading this is that a lot of times you, as a counselor, you'll be the one leading this school profile creation, but usually your administration and even the school board likes to sign off on it. And so sometimes some of the weird design or aesthetic pieces won't always come from you. It'll come from your administration or your school board. But I agree, 3 columns here is not working. I will share that I find this is much more digestible. It is much easier to read than the last one. I think the content in some ways is more relevant because they aren't listing every course the school offers. I think it's less busy. I will say, even right now, I'm thinking, what are those AP classes that the school offers? I wish I knew that, right? I wish I knew that it's AP calculus versus no calculus at all. I wish I knew that it's AP English versus no English at all. And I know they probably can't list all dual enrollment opportunities because students can take those off campus, but at least knowing what those AP classes are would be super helpful for me, especially if a student wants to study a STEM. I know I'm from rural Missouri. I wish they had mentioned Missouri S&T being right there. Missouri S&T is a large STEM state school. and being able to take classes and do internships.
It'll
And
keep.
I know a lot of RAWA senior high school students take classes at Missouri S&T or do labs and research there. So I wish they had at least mentioned that in their school profile. All right, so I'm going to actually ask Aaron to stop screen sharing really quickly so I can screen share. I'm going to show you the template that the Stars College Network uses. Again, we're actually going to email this to all of you. And we've actually had many counselors attend workshops like this for the Stars Network who've actually used this when they got home. But you will see here, this is the school profile template that we actually recommend. There's a lot of words on here because, for instance, this top right part, I would rather this be a bullet point if you can, but the text there is kind of just walk you through what you could talk about. So I know this is very paragraph heavy, but hopefully yours would not be. The paragraphs are more to walk you through what you would include. So top left, insert logo. Obviously, if you have a school logo, great, include that. High school name. If you know what your seed code is through the Common App and the College Board, great, include that. If you don't, that's okay, don't worry about it. But if you know what your seed code is on the back end to make things even more difficult for everybody, admissions reps use their seed codes more than anything else in what we call Slate. But if you don't have it, don't worry about it. Street address here, city, state, zip code. I really care more about city and state, really. I just want to know what where your town is located. This is so important. I want to highlight this 1,000 times over. I need to know how to get a hold of you and your counseling team. I don't care, no offense, if there's any principals in the room. I don't care principals about you. I don't care about your school board. I don't care about your superintendents. I care about your counseling team who is on the ground with students every single day. So I need to know the counselor and advisor name, their title, phone number, and email address. If you have multiple counselors, great. Just give me one, or give me your counseling secretary's phone number, or give me your main office's phone number. If you think, well, our counseling team changes, every couple of years, this should be a living document anyway. You shouldn't create this next week and never touch it again for 10 years. So even if a counselor leaves, hopefully not, but I know in rural America that's the case right now. Even if your counseling team leaves every couple of years, fine. This should not be sitting on a computer or on your website for 10 years and never touched again. So this should be updated regularly anyway. So that's the most important thing I can tell you is please have counselor and advisor name and information. Tell us what this is. And so you know what it is, school profile. Okay, right here. Someone mentioned earlier that, I think it was Carrie, that the last one didn't have very many bullet points. This right here is an easy way to do that. Number of students total in your high school. Number of seniors at your high school, percent of students on free and reduced lunch, percent of students of color, percent that are first generation college students, percent of graduates at two-year schools, four-year schools, percent of graduates not in college at all. I know a lot of this info you don't have right now, but a lot of it you can get by just asking people in your school. Some of it you might never have, and that's okay. If you don't have all of these fast facts here, that's okay. Remove some of these, add different ones. These are just suggestions for you, but I really think these top 4 are super important. Number of students in your high school, number of seniors, percent on free or reduced lunch, and percent students of color. I am screen sharing, so I cannot see the question, so I will ask him to ask that question for me here in a little bit. So top right, so talking about your high school and your community. So I won't read this paragraph in depth, but this is where you would use this space to provide contextual information about your high school and local community. So examples include population size and local area, time spent traveling to school on average by your students, career backgrounds for most parents and guardians. Again, what's the common industry? Unique cultural elements. So West Liberty, Iowa, a reminder, is the only Latinx majority community in Iowa. This last sentence is really important. Having a sense for the local community will help the admissions counselor understand the environment in which your students live and learn. Okay, next one is extracurricular activities and community service. So use this space to list extracurricular activities, athletic offerings, and community service requirements for your students. If the activity is unique to your school, so maybe your school has this unique kind of activity that no other school has, maybe explain what that is. I would not use this space to list every offering your school has, but say we have, 25 different athletics teams, we have fine arts programs, we have an agreement with the local factory for our students to work part-time during senior year. I would use this space to give us a summation of some of the things that your students are involved in outside the classroom. Bottom right here, use this space to illustrate academic outcomes of your students. So standardized test scores, test score performance. Are classes taken on a year-long or semester-based block schedule? Grading periods. What is your grading scale? Rank, all of that can go right here. This will help the admissions counselor understand a student's performance in relation to their peers. That's page 1. So again, much easier to navigate, much less cluttered. You can use this to be a paragraph form. You can use this to be bullet points. On the left are quick little fast facts. In the middle, most important, is counselor advisor name. All right, page 2. This is where you can list course offerings, dual enrollment, and career and technical education. So you could use this space to outline your school's course offerings, dual enrollment information if offered, and any relevant career and technical education opportunities. So if your school offers AP, IB, or honors, explain that. If your school doesn't have that, do not worry. This will help us understand what was available to your student. I love this pro tip here. Dual enrollment functions differently at almost every high school. Even if you think, oh, my high school is enrollment the same as my neighboring high school, I promise you, your school's dual enrollment policy is probably different than most other people's on this call. So if your school offers dual enrollment, use this space to explain how the course is reflected on their transcript and how grades are awarded. Does that dual enrollment double count for college credit and high school credit? Great. My high school did not. My high school was only high school credit, but a high school near me growing up was only college credit. So explain how that works. If you want to include course offerings, you can. This is also more freedom to be flexible here. So you can list every course offering in English if you want to, or only list your advanced courses. You can list every course your school offers in science if you want to, or just list your advanced courses. Up to you, again, how you build this school profile. And then if you want to use a key to maybe do asterisks or abbreviations for dual enrollment, honor semesters, you can. And then again, pro tip here, make sure to explain in this section or earlier in their profile if additional weight is given to honors, IB, AP, or advanced courses. That was a lot very quickly, but again, I want to share a few things. This is your document. So what Aaron does in Autonomous will be very different than what you might do at your high school for different reasons. You can use this as you want to, get creative if you want to. You can build this in Canva. I wouldn't say be like Legally Blonde and have perfume on your school profile because it's going to be uploaded into the Common App anyway. So even simply having a white document with words, it's fine. If you want to be creative, you can, but you don't have to be. I think the question was, the question in the chat was, how do we know if our school has submitted a school profile? So one, you can log into your school's account on the Common App to find out. 2, you can email a school rep that uses Common App to see if it's in there. But I also want to say, hopefully your school knows in the past, right? Because some counselors think, oh, a school profile, I'm only going to use that for the Common App. Actually, I had a school counselor give me this idea 3 years ago. She uses her school profile on her website of the school. That way, if new parents are moving into the area and considering sending their kids to this school, they kind of know a lot of info that I want. Other parents, not just college reps, parents care too what the demographics of your school are. Parents care too what offerings your school have. Parents care too how many of your students go to college versus the workforce versus the military. Like whatever pathway that is, that's great. We love all pathways. The parents want to know that information. So, I encourage you to, if you don't know if your school has a school profile, they probably don't have one. So I would create one. We're going to email you this template right here. A lot of this info you might already have. Some of this info you might need to get from school administrators or find a way to get yourself. But if your school does have a school profile, great. Love that. Update it, look at it. Maybe set a reminder to look at it every two or 3 years. If your school doesn't have one, or you don't know if they have one, they probably don't. And it's okay, and that's okay. That's great. We had a counselor from Fulton, Missouri, who Kim met actually at a counselor workshop at WashU back in March. Who they had no school profile at all. Came to the same workshop, went home, built one. Actually sent us our school profile over the summer just to say that I built one. It was cool to see that it took her, she said, no more than 3 hours max over the course of a month to build out the school profile. Okay, so running low on time, so I want to open it up to any questions folks have. Have Aaron pull up the slide for me as well. Any questions that people have about the school profile while we're finishing up this workshop here? You can go to the next slide for me, Aaron. Go 2 slides over. So, oh, one more slide, sorry. That was time for us to have a little activity, but we're out of time. I want to discuss assets of rural students real fast. I won't go through this too in depth, but there's a lot of things that a lot of our admissions officers, a lot of the 32 schools that are part of the Stars College Network, we prioritize rural students for many reasons. A lot of them that are on this list, as you all know, rural students value community, they demonstrate empathy, they model resilience, they value hard work, etc. A lot of this we will see on the school profile. So for fast facts, for instance, if many of your students, if let's say half your student body works part-time in senior year during school hours, because there's an agreement that they can do that, I want to know that. I want to know that, hey, these students value hard work, and a lot of them are out working part-time while they are at this school. If a certain number of your, if your student body is very involved on campus at your high school, and like, let's say 40% are involved in at least 2 or 3 student organizations, that's great. That shows that they value community, they value being part of their high school and local community. I want to hear that. So a school profile should already, if you're doing it right, if you're filling out ways that the template shows you, a lot of this info will already be filled out as part of that school profile. And again, we value rural students, and the best way for you to support your students at a highly selective university in holistic review process is a school profile. So many times I want to admit a student to WashU, and I'm like, I just wish I knew they'd been offered calculus or AP English or been offered physics. And if I simply had a school profile, just knowing, hey, you know what? The school doesn't have any of those advanced classes, knowing that would help me better advocate for your students in committee. So school profiles are super, super important. Next slide for me, Aaron. We still have time for a few questions if folks have any, but the left QR code here goes to our Stars College Network. Again, we are 32 schools, colleges and universities across the country who prioritize rural students. We have everything from student fly-in programs where we'll fly your students free of charge to our campus for a week to engage with campuses, to engage with other rural students. We have counselor programs. Both Aaron and Kim have participated in one of them in the past year. We have webinars like this that we put on every single month virtually. And so I definitely encourage you to go to the left QR code. And the right QR code goes to WashU's specific commitment to serving rural and small town students. We have an entire website for rural counselors and rural students. A little plug, we have our WashU Rural Scholars Academy that happens every July. So we bring 50 rural high school rising juniors, so current sophomores, to campus every July for a week-long pre-college program. Students spend a week with us learning about college admissions, doing an 8-hour course. They meet other rural students. We have rural peer ambassadors who are current WashU students from rural communities like yourselves who study at WashU, who live in the residence halls with these students. Applications for that program open on November 1st and close March 1st. It's a program built literally for your students. So your top highest achieving sophomores, this is for them. And so this is a chance for you to say, oh, the Stars College Network, this is anomaly. They say they do all this great stuff. No, we actually do. This is a really cool program right now that your students can apply for. We will literally pay for everything from housing to their travel to their meals. So if go to the right QR code, you can learn more about our WashU Rural Scholars Academy, and your students can apply that way. And then lastly, I just want to leave you, if you have questions, if you're like, I created a school profile, does it look okay? Email it to us. Myself and another rep from a different Stars College Network school. I will put my chat here. Marina, who worked at Fulton High School in rural Missouri. Again, she came to the same workshop back in March, went home, created a brand new school profile all on her own and emailed it to me and said, hey, Fulton, is this helpful? Does this help give context for our community? And so I was able to share feedback with her and give her advice on that school profile. So if you go home, you make one with a template, please reach out, share it with me. I'd love to give you feedback on what your school profile looks like, what it's missing, what you could adjust or pivot.
Dacoda, thank you so much. That was amazing. And just a wealth of information. I feel like we could do another webinar. Maybe we will hit you up for that on the assets of rural students. I encourage all of you to go back and take a look at that slide where with those bullet points about assets of rural students, and think about how you could write about those things in your counselor letters of recommendation where your students have demonstrated those things, because in addition to the school profile, that's another really great place where I'm sure you all have really awesome anecdotes about your students related to those different bullet points. And so I just want to thank Dacoda. I know you have a really busy schedule right now between travel and fall recruitment. And so we're really grateful for your time today. And I encourage all of you to take advantage of reaching out to Dacoda if you'd like some feedback about your school profile. And we hope to see you at our next Learning Lab. Kim posted the link in the chat. So our next Learning Lab is in November, and it's on November 5th. The link to register is in the chat. At the recording, so if you have a colleague that you know would benefit from this information, the recording from this Learning Lab will be uploaded to our YouTube channel soon. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon. I think we might have some folks that had to move on to other things that still have us on their screen there.